You have come to the right place to spend what is perhaps the most Dada moment in the political history of the United States, with Andrei Codrescu and his band of Dada players. Please help me give a raucous and very warm welcome to Andrei and the students he's been working with this semester.
Thank you. This will be an exercise in divided attention. You'll hear a few of my words. I have no idea what goes on there. I don't really want to know. We'll have the winner called early tonight in a special exercise. But given the history being made today, I would like to note some other kinds of histories that were offered in San Francisco this week or these last days by the Dada events and talks, and ask 5 questions that all these histories must somehow answer, whatever goes on over there. And the most obvious urgent history is obviously unfolding right now, and it's not even history yet. I mean, it's future history. It's tomorrow's history. So this history will have some time to answer, though I hope it will do so in less than 100 years. The 100 years later histories of Dada are the stories of the historical Dada, and don't get more interesting, fortunately, than Dada, when it was actually happening in 1916. History is at loggerheads with Dada, which was a cry of, we want to fuck up the world and we want to do it now, which was heard later in some other form. But telling the story of a group of artists and poets who wanted to fuck up the world in 1916 is instructive in the sense that history fucked them up instead. History did that to them almost as soon as their cry for destruction of the rotten world of polite lies and savage slaughter went up. When the war they hated was over, they were delivered to the vicious chronologies of culture wars and its unfolding ideas about the kind of world they wanted. Leaving aside this kind of internecine fronts, which are a lot part of the avant-garde, there was big history, which always rolled its indifferent tanks over the bodies of sensitives. Bolshevism in Russia didn't particularly distinguish between pacifists and bystanders. Very few people noted that Cabaret Voltaire's neighbor on Spiegelgasse in Zurich was Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. Many scholars dutifully acknowledge the fact that in Zurich in 1916, there were socialists and anarchists and pacifists and mystics and scammers and spies. It's a kind of undifferentiated political broth that the Dadas were stewing in. And that broth was spilled on the ground and was washed away by the rivers of blood that Lenin and his comrades loosened over Europe and the world for the next 75 years. When we do time differently now. When Lenin's ideological murder machine was finished in 1991, Dada and the Dadaists began to be remembered as the circusy grouplet that was the only one to issue a radical and uncompromising no to all the European philosophy and art that ended up feeding the murder machines of Lenin and his later incarnations of Stalin and Hitler. Until now, maybe few historians and certainly fewer curators and collectors entertained even vaguely the idea of any genuine equivalence between the ideology of communism, fascism, and Hitlerism and the chaos of the da-da-da circus. This equivalence remained invisible because the chronological and narrative vice of history telling and object fetishism depend on their coherence for seeing an anti-historical, anti-narrative action as just an element of their story, a detail of what was boiling in the Zurich soup. Yet Tsara, the Dadaist, and Lenin, the Bolshevik, played chess. Two men, two opponents. Chaos and art against ideology and class war. At the time, chess was real. The powers behind the board stayed within the laws of chess, and neither player knew the stakes. They didn't know that they were playing for the world of the 20th century. The claims of the Dadaists were grandiose and poetic, but unlike the many unfolding art novelties around them, they remained resolute about their negativity, about the big no they called to historical storytelling. To give any legitimacy to the Dada movement, historians would have to take Dada seriously. So, question. Why did big history take Lenin seriously? And why did big history not take Tristan Tzara seriously? If big history and its historians would have taken Tzara and Lenin seriously, what would the world look like now? And part of the same question, what would have happened if the spontaneous procedures of Dada would have gained the interest that Lenin and Hitler's ideologies did?
I want a dyke for president. I want a person with AIDS for president, and I want a fag for vice president. And I want someone with no health insurance, and I want someone who grew up in a place where the earth was so saturated with toxic waste that they had no choice but to get leukemia. I want a president that had an abortion at 16, and I want a candidate who isn't the lesser of two evils. And I want a president who lost their last lover to AIDS, who still sees that in their eyes every time they go to bed, who held their lover in their arms and knew they were dying. I want a president with no air conditioning, a president who has stood in line at the clinic and at the DMV and at the motherfucking welfare office and has been unemployed and laid off and sexually harassed and gay bashed and deported well beyond that motherfucking wall. I want someone who has spent the night in the tombs and had a cross burned on their lawn and survived rape. I want someone who has been in love and has been hurt, who respects sex, who has made mistakes and learned from them. I want a black woman for president. I want someone with bad teeth and an attitude. I want someone who has tasted that nasty fucking hospital food. And someone who cross-dresses and someone who has done drugs, heroin included, and gone to therapy. I want someone who has committed to civil disobedience, and I want to know why this isn't possible. I want to know when and why we started learning somewhere down the line that a president is always a clown, always a John, and never a hooker. Always a boss, and never a worker. Always a liar, always a thief, and never caught.
The same question, continue. What would have happened if the spontaneous procedures of Dada would have gained interest the way Lenin and Hitler's ideologies did? What allowed ideologies and philosophical rhetorics to run syntactically correct social upheavals unchecked by the boredom of the audience that they didn't believe in, indeed seeking audiences and their boredom to create the vacuum in which to exercise the power of exterminating them? This question might seem absurd because many other articulate leftists or nationalists or artistic chunks of gristle in the Zurich soup, including communists, were busy classifying people in identifiable categories: workers, the bourgeoisie, capitalists, intelligentsia, the proletariats, the lumpen proletariat, and so on. They were creating classes of people who were altogether a mass, which they set out to fight for class interests. The masses were an invention of pamphleteering. Before the masses, there were mobs, crowds, le foule, and proletarians were city dwellers, peasants, monks, beggars, and with industrialization, factory workers and laborers. And this work of classifying and identifying adversary interests was less creative than the grotesque puppets of Marcel Janku and the costumes of the Baroness Else van Loringhoven, but they were greatly more recognizable to people steeped in a century of complete sentences, and infinitely more boring, producers of brain death and angry sleep.
What happened?
Dada was loud. In the not-so-distant past of the carnivalesque Middle Ages, thinkers divided people by professions, by guilds, by religion, by kinship, and mostly identified them by what they made: weapons, clothes, wooden implements, sermons, gold, money, beggary. Simplifying this rich world became an intellectual enterprise that abstracted people from their labor and turned them into clueless machines that found their expression in Henry Ford's assembly line and the idiot armies of dictators. The new classifications of the industrial age were heading for the utopian revolutions engendered by the complete sentence. That was the future the Dada said no to. In 1916, the Dada questioned this future and unleashed the spirit of revolt against coherent ideologies, including those arts that left open back doors for eventual compromises with the faux sense of grammar. The second question is, why did 100 years after the birth of Dada and its myriad of extensions into the past and into the now of hippies, yippies, situationists, eco-activists, and hackers is the rhetoric of the narrators of history and the prisons of museums starting to get a hold of Dada as a historical, hence dead story?
This is a trigger warning. Ba, 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 ba. Close your eyes, take cover, walk out that door, because these words will sting. Bleed you dry. Did I offend? Does your trauma trump mine? Did I say too much? Here, stand in that square over there. You know, we're talking borders and boundaries. If you don't want to be touched, jump in there. Does this body, offend? Here's a gun. Do you want to kill a woman today? Shoot her dead? Fuck her holes? So what? You ain't the only pervert around for miles. You got sickos and rapists who get to swim in pools filled with cash. Fuck, they get to be your president. body is a battlefield for your swing dicks.
So let us consider some other questions about the telling of Dada now and the historical moment unfolding behind and in front of us. These questions are about psychology and technology. Yeah. Psychology, I'm quoting from my book. Dadaist dreams will not suffer either Freudian, Jungian, or Lacanian interpretations. Tzara employed the technique of experimental dreaming in his 1935 poem essay, Grain et Tissu. Deliberate dreaming as directed dreaming or hypnotic suggestion was widely practiced by theosophists in the 19th century, but Tzara stripped the prose from oniric transmission and employed only those dream essences that refused to make sense. Dada's attitude to dreams was no different than Calderón de la Barca's La vida es sueño, life is a dream. There isn't any point in analyzing dreams if everything is a dream. The analyst could be known by the upholder of the reality Dada meant to escape from and do away with it forever. So why not do away forever with the quotation marks around reality? And the question of technology. Dada is the viral option to the virtual certainty. I've got my introducer quoted that actually. Dada is the viral option to the virtual certainty. It means to record only what can't be Googled. In other words, only what hasn't yet been captured. This claim to the non-Googleable is pretty huge. I know that Google, a mortal company, can go the way of Xerox, which used to be synonymous with copying. But in the grand collage that is Dada, past and future companies are equally usable. Look at the fragment of newspaper inserted by Kurt Schwitters in his 1920 collage. The actual newspaper, with its oh so urgent events of the day, is long forgotten, but the section preserved in Schwitters' collage is immortal. If the 20th century has taught us anything, it is that we will forget everything except the box it came in.
One Mississippi, two Mississippi, three Minnesota, four Minnesota, five Minnesota, six Michigan, seven Michigan, eight Michigan, 9 Oregon, 10 Oregon, 11 Oregon, 13 California, 14 California, 15 California, 16 California, 17 California, 18 Florida, 19 Florida, 20 Florida, 21 New York, 22 New York, 22 New York, 30 New Jersey, 40 New Jersey, 41 Mexico, 42 Canada, 43 Israel, 44 Israel, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50 United States of America.
So right now, we're going to actually call the winner of this election, and it will be called by Chewy. As you can tell, the political parties are present, and Chewy is perfectly aware. Decided tonight. Thank you, Chewy. Is there a record of how the Dadas voted? If they ever did? I mean, there is actually. Tristan Tzara became a communist. Hugo Ball voted to become a Catholic mystic. And Richard Hulsenbeck became a psychiatrist on Park Avenue in New York after he changed his name. All those choices they voted for ended up trapping them in the narratives of history that only their youthful spirit escaped from. So technology with its utopian engineering will do nothing but speed up the slicing of humans into thinner and thinner slices of marketing reflexes. Its only purpose to remove the equally growing boredom that, as Baudelaire said in Robert Lowell's translation, among the vermin, jackals, panthers, lice, gorillas, and tarantulas that suck and snatch and scratch us and defecate and fuck in the disorderly circus of our vices. There is one more ugly and abortive birth. It makes no gestures, never beats its breast, yet it will murder for a moment's rest and willingly annihilate the earth. It's boredom. Tears have glued its eyes together. You know it well, my reader. This obscene beast chain smokes yawning for the guillotine. You hypocrite reader, my double, my brother.
So nice. Thank you very much. That's really nice. Thank you. It's great to be at Trump Tower. It's great to be in a wonderful city, New York, and it's an honor to have everybody here. This is beyond anybody's expectations. There's been no crowd like this. And I could tell some of the candidates they went in, they didn't know the air conditioner didn't work. They sweated like dogs. They didn't know the room was too big because they didn't have anybody there. How are they going to beat ISIS? I beat China all the time. They're laughing at us at our stupidity. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. Politicians are all talk, no action. We need a leader that wrote The Art of the Deal. To take the brand of the United States and make it great again. It's not great again. A truly successful person, a really, really successful person, and even modestly successful, cannot run for public office. Just can't happen. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again. How stupid are our leaders? How stupid are these politicians to allow this to happen? How stupid are they? Be careful of a bubble, because what you've seen in the past might be small potatoes to what happens. So under President Trump, here's what would happen.
So you did vote against boredom. Vote against boredom of fascism. Oh my God. Sorry, I swore I wouldn't do that. But for all the talk of enhanced and virtual reality, the first fully awake AI will make humans forever obsolete. So today, we live in the transitional glasshouse echo chamber of the internet, but our automated life is not essentially different than that of people at the beginning of the 20th century. They too would have preferred to live a life free of the iron fist of the coming dictatorships of the 20th century. They should have chosen Dada instead of Bolshevism and fascism. Thank you and good night.